But first, I just want to really personally thank Anthony Lynn for his 4 years of work here. It was truly an honor working next to him during that time. And the one thing I don't want to get lost here is because he is such a great human being. Anthony's an excellent football coach. And I really feel like he was the right coach at the right time for us in 2017. He ushered us through a pretty challenging transition. He took us to the playoffs in 2018. His leadership here of the team was impeccable. His knowledge of personnel, his ability to know both sides of the ball, and then even coaching, as you guys saw, coaching special teams the last quarter of the season kind of shows the depth of his football knowledge. And it was really a pleasure working with him the last 4 years. I mean, I feel like he made me a better GM. So, but, just quite simply, we just didn't win enough games the last 2 years. And is that all on the head coach? Obviously not. It's a partnership between myself and the head coach. And I need to do a better job getting this team over the hump. So, we decided to chart a new path for 2021 and beyond. So we'll cast a pretty wide net, with the head coaching search. Keep an open mind, and we'll find the best coach for the Chargers for 2021 and beyond. So with that, I'll just kind of open it up to questions.
We'll just go down the line here. Cam, go ahead.
Hey, Tom, thanks for making time for us today. A few questions I have is, what influence will the new coach have on personnel decisions?
Let me just put this on gallery view. Same as always. I mean, every decision that's made here, when it comes to personnel, head coach has a huge input on it. That's the way it works. I think that's the right way. I think that's how you win that way. So, there's not a decision that's made here personnel-wise that doesn't involve the head coach.
What are the characteristics that you're looking for in a head coach, in your new head coach?
Well, I think it starts with leadership. I mean, that's where it's got to start. So, presence, communication skills, high character. I really believe the culture of your organization is a direct reflection of the character of your head coach. So I think you start there, and then, it kind of traces from there. But I think the important thing to remember is we're hiring a head coach of the LA Chargers, a head coach of the whole football team. We're not hiring an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator. We're not hiring a quarterback coach. It's a head coach. But like I said, we'll cast a wide net. I mean, the benefit right now with starting off with Zoom interviews is you can talk to a lot more people than you could in the past. So let's just kind of open up a little bit wider, talk to more people, and kind of see how the process takes us from there.
Lastly, for me, if you have a coach in mind, is that particular coach performing in the playoffs this season?
I mean, I don't have any specific coaches in mind right now.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Nick.
Hey, Tom, thanks for taking time out. You spoke about how Anthony Lynn you feel like he made you a better GM. In what ways do you feel like he made you a better GM?
I'll tell you what, he was an excellent decision maker and a great person to bounce ideas off of. And it's funny, and I think I've mentioned this before. I mean, obviously, as a general manager, you see short term, but you also have to look long term with all the decisions you make. And typically, a head coach is the opposite. He just wants to, how this decision affects me this Sunday. And Anthony had a great ability to be able to see past that, to see any decision we make, how it's going to affect this Sunday, how it could affect next Sunday, and how it could affect years to come. That made my job a lot easier. And just seeing how he handled the players, how he handled the team, how he connected with them. I could go on and on about what he meant to me. It was a pleasure to work with.
And with the departure of Anthony Lynn, how confident are you as far as your job security is concerned now that you're going into your third head coach under your tenure with the previous two coaches that have not even made the AFC Championship or Super Bowl appearance?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. I think if, as an objective observer, I think if you look at our team, I think you can see we have an opportunity to ascend quickly. And I understand that the fan frustration Because I've talked about we need to win at a sustained level. And right now it's been peaks and valleys, with the peaks not being long enough and the valleys being too long. So, it's been 2 years since we won 12 games. It's been 2 years since we made the playoffs. It's been 2 years since we won a playoff game. But as we move into 2021, it's really going to be an unprecedented salary cap situation where the cap's actually going to go down, which never has before. Despite that, we're in a very healthy position there. I think that's a big positive. We've got 9 picks in the draft this year, and that's going to be key. For a year where the cap is going down, rookie contracts really take on a bigger precedent. Obviously, those numbers are going to be a little more flexible and healthy than a veteran contract. And we have some players to build around. Obviously, we have a young franchise quarterback. We have some weapons that he can throw to and hand off to. And then on defense, we've got some young core players that can really play. I mean, between Joey Bosa and then Kenny Murray and Derwin James, at each of the 3 levels of defense and some other players around them, we have pieces there to continue to build. And that's exciting. So, we've got work to do, obviously. It's nowhere near a perfect roster. That's what we work towards. It's not that right now. But I think we got a bright future here.
And you mentioned all the intangibles as far as this being one of the most attractive jobs on the market with the people that you mentioned. But what has surprised you the most about from the time that you drafted Justin Herbert to where he finished this season?
Well, he had a heck of a year. I think it's just how he handled the whole situation. The poise he showed, from week 2 all the way to week 17. I think it's just impressive for a young player, for a rookie. I think it was very helpful that he was a 4-year player in college. I think that helped, and I think he's very lucky. He was raised the right way, 2 great parents and some great high school and college coaches to prepare him for this level. But it's really all the little things that he did in the building, how he prepared, how he interacted with his teammates, the humility that he shows. He has a really, really bright future here.
Thank you, Tom.
Jeff.
Tom, when was the decision made on Anthony?
After the season.
And
after the Kansas City game.
Given what you just talked about, what he meant, how difficult of a conversation was that to have with him?
In this business, especially the head coach and GM, we spend a lot of time together. All of us do. We spend obviously a lot more time here than we do with our families during the season. And then when you go into games, it's an emotional business, wins and losses, all the bus rides, all the plane rides, we sit next to each other on the bus, physically distant, but, bus rides, plane, spend a lot of time. And you both have a vision of how we're going to get to win a championship. And then, but we also know, this is the business we signed up for. It's a difficult business. We know that. So, yeah, it's never easy. And it's not just the head coach. There's other coaches here, other support staff too. We all know that we're not here forever. We're not going to work together forever. But it was certainly difficult.
Tom, what you mentioned the talent that people talk about all the time on this roster. Why didn't you guys win more? What happened? What happened with Anthony this year? Really, the last couple of years.
Yeah, if it was easy, we'd have it fixed by now. There's just so many things that go into it, and it's the way it is in this business. A lot you can control, some you can't, but more you can control. But if it was just 1 or 2 little things, it'd be easy fixes. It's just not, So, like I said, just the last 2 years, we just didn't win enough games. That's really what it comes down to. And we'll chart a new path, and we'll keep working at this.
And Tom, what the rest of Anthony's staff, those guys, what is their status right now?
Well, everybody's here. So, we have some coaches with expiring contracts, some coaches that do not have expiring contracts, but everybody as of right now is all here.
And before you hired Anthony, he had coached one game in the NFL. Will you look for somebody who's been a head coach more? Are you more inclined to do that now or no?
I don't think so. I think, like I said before, we got to keep an open mind. I think what you don't want to do when you're hiring a head coach, is look back and see exactly, hey, this is where we missed on. This has to change. We have to go for the exact opposite. That's not really how it works. You're looking for a lot of the same things. We're looking for the head coach of the football team. He'll have an expertise on one side of the ball, or special teams for that matter. No, I mean, it's going to have to be, like I said, open-minded, wide net, and it is enjoyable getting a chance to talk to a lot of these coaches, really in depth about football, and that's what we'll do. We'll kind of work through the process, go from there.
And Tom, some teams have been very transparent, even announcing the people they have talked to. You guys haven't done that so far. Is that just a personal preference on your part? Is that an organizational philosophy, or?
Jeff, I've been trying to be pretty transparent with everything.
But I mean, some teams are putting on, here's the 5 guys we just talked to.
Look, nowadays, I mean, everything's out there anyway. So, I guess it's just organizational philosophy. I don't think you're missing anything, though. I really don't.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Popper.
Hey, Tom, you said this time last season at this press conference after last season that you thought Anthony was a championship level coach. Has your opinion in that regard changed at all? You know what?
I think he can be a good head coach in this league. I mean, I was with him for 4 years. I think he can. There's no doubt. We just couldn't get it going the last 2 years. I mean, and like I said, if it was 1 or 2 things, it'd be easy fixes, but it's just not, doesn't work like that. But I think organizationally, we just decided, let's chart a new path here. Let's go a different direction. Let's see what we can do. But yes, I have a lot of confidence in Anthony. I really do.
Dean, in his statement, used the word innovation and innovative to sort of describe what the coaching search, and he wants that to spread to all facets of the organization, assuming the coaching staff. Are you aligned in that belief that you need more innovation, and what does that mean to you in terms of coaching?
Well, I think when you make a head coach change, there's going to be innovation is changing, and we'll change with that. Innovation is great. Being aggressive is wonderful. Recklessness is not. We'll evaluate how we do everything. Innovation could mean a lot of different things. Part of that's just change. There'll be definitely some change here.
You mentioned in response to Jeff's question that all the coaches are still with you. Will the next head coach have say over his staff?
Oh, yes. Always have.
Okay. And then just how do you get more consistency out of your offensive line? Obviously, you've dealt with a number of injuries there over the last 2 seasons, whether it was Russell and Mike and Brian this year, Trey. But just that's obviously a factor, and maybe that's the only reason. But as you said, there's obviously a number of factors. Just how do you get more consistency out of that group?
A lot of different ways. One, through player development, and that's each individual player improving. When they all individually improve, collectively they get better. Collectively they play more consistent. And some of it, we got to get better up front. Some of it is talent, obviously. So there's different ways to approach it. I thought James Campen did a very good job this year. I was really impressed with how James coaches on the field. Saw development in our players. Dan Feeney was his first time in his career playing center for us. He was an everyday center for us a whole year. It's unfortunate, but this was Forrest Lamp's first year of playing a full season. It was Sam Tebby's first year playing left tackle. So all that kind of goes into it. And then, obviously the right side of the line, Trey Turner had been relatively durable in Carolina. He had a lot of injuries this year. I knew Brian Balaga did have some injury history coming here, but felt like it was worth the risk. And it just seemed like things kept cropping up with him, and he is tough, and they're all legitimate injuries. It just sometimes it happens. Some health would be good. Some consistency of being in the same spot would be very good. Another year. Now, I don't know who James Campen did a great job, but with a new head coach, that coach is going to have a full say on his coaching staff, like they always have here. I'll give recommendations, but it's the head coach's decision. Obviously as we go into the off season, we develop what we have, and then we'll add to that, and then let it play out in training camp.
Obviously, at that spot, you're not going to address specific players in terms of free agency. I know that's not something you'll do, but just generally speaking,
Too early, anyways.
Yeah, But just generally speaking, do you feel like you have players in here that you want to be, in terms of offensive linemen, that you want to be a part of the future there?
Yeah, I think there's some, but I think there's a lot of improvement that needs to be made in that area.
And so would you expect to be aggressive in that area in free agency? Obviously, you guys are healthy cap wise and could potentially exploit the market as teams are trying to sort of get under the cap. Do you see that as sort of an advantage maybe as you're trying to get more talented up there?
I mean, we've always been aggressive in player acquisition, so it doesn't matter what position.
And then just last one for me, Nas Adderley got a significant amount of playing time last year. Obviously, it was basically his rookie season after missing all of last year. And then Jerry Tillery, your top 2 picks from 2019. Just what did you think about both those guys, and where do they sort of exactly fit on this roster moving forward?
Well, they certainly fit. Jerry, love what Jerry did this year. Jerry took a huge step. Really played 2 different positions, played inside at defensive tackle, played defensive end. Love the intensity and the edge he plays with. Does it get him in trouble at times? It does, but I'd rather have that and dial it back than the other way around. He shows some pass rushing ability on the edge. And you look at his pass rush rate numbers, they're up there with some pretty good company in this league. So he did a very good job affecting the quarterback. Obviously, sacks are great. We would love to have sacks. Sacks are a loss of yardage and a loss of down. But pressuring the quarterback affects a lot of the down as well. He did a very good job with that. I really was pleased with how he played this year. And he still has a huge ceiling to go. And like you said, with Nas, essentially a rookie year for him. He had his peaks and his valleys, kind of like our team did this year. But he battled through. I think he has a bright future in this league. Watching him practice every day, and these are the type of guys, it's not just him, but we need more guys like this too. He practices every play like it's his last one, to the point where we have to kind of slow him down in practice. He wants to make every interception. He plays the ball every time he gets a chance, and he practices hard. He practices well. So when I see that, and I see a young player, I think he's going to keep getting better. He puts a lot of work into it. He's very gifted athletically, as you all saw, throwing him back there on kickoff returns, which he did some in college. But athletic, has great ball skills. I mean, he would pick off probably 1 or 2 balls a week in practice, maybe more. Just has a real good knack for it, and he practices extremely hard. I've got high hopes for those guys.
Thank you.
Joe.
Thanks for doing this, Tom. I know there have been a lot of platitudes and tributes to Anthony the past couple days, but besides not winning as much, why isn't Anthony Lynn the head coach right now?
Yeah, I think that's been asked twice already, Joe. It's just no easy answers to it. There really isn't. I mean, every game is a little bit different. They're all a bit unique. I know people try and put them all in the same categories and label them, but they're not. They're all a little bit different. But this is professional sports is a difficult business. I love it. We all love it. We have a passion for it, but it's not an easy business. So in the end, the results just weren't there the last 2 years. And that's just the way that it happens sometimes.
Did the 4-game winning streak basically have no bearing at the end of the season with the decision?
For the general manager, for myself, from week 1 to week 17, I am 100% behind our players and our staff, assistant coaches and head coach. And that's unequivocally. So, yeah, that meant a lot winning those last 4 games. It meant a lot to us. I mean, to lose 45-0 to a New England team that wasn't going to the playoffs this year was extremely difficult. And our coaching staff and the players at that point, because we were out of it, obviously, could have just mailed it in, and nobody did. And win those last 4 games. But then, you have to look back at the whole body of work for the last, couple of years. You just can't look at the last 4 games of the season. Although it was helpful and I'm proud of that. I'm probably more proud than you would think about how everybody reacted to the last month of the year, when we knew it's hard in this league when you're out of the playoffs. It's hard to get motivated, and our players are motivated to play, and our coaches motivated them. I won't forget that.
I know it came up on NFL Network on Monday, and Rod Graves was on. Has there been any calls from the Fritz Pollard alliance about firing Anthony, considering he was a black head coach who was 2 games over 500 and a lack of minorities in the league?
I know Rod Graves very well. He's a friend of mine, but nobody's called to say anything like that. So.
Okay. Just why the lack of transparency on interviews this time? Because the past 2 searches you have done, there has been transparencies at least announced on when interviews have been conducted and everything.
Joe, I don't think you covered us in 2016. I'd have to look it up. I really doubt that we announced when we were interviewing coaches.
You announced them on Twitter, Tom. I looked it up.
As if we did, but I think at this point, I'll tell all of you, I mean, there's nothing that I saw out there that wasn't accurate. So I don't think your guys going to miss anything out of this.
Okay, but your team site and Twitter account did announce when interviews were completed.
Okay.
And then just last thing for me, what with the fan base would you say or give them confidence that your third hire, this one, can get you over the top?
Well, I guess I kind of covered it earlier, but I do appreciate the confidence that Dean and John and AG have shown in me. I really do. I don't take that for granted. I've been in this league for 25 plus years. I worked for good people. I've been in good organizations, but I also know, and I learned this from Jim Irsay when I worked with the Colts. I mean, we're a steward of the organization. These are year-to-year jobs. These are not lifetime appointed positions. It's not like a Supreme Court justice. I guess technically you could impeach a Supreme Court justice, but it hasn't been done in 200 years. But I don't even know why I said that. Look it up, Jeff. I'm telling you, it's over 200 years. Look, I don't think I'm going to change anyone's opinions of what they have of myself or of this football team. I think if you look at where we are, I think there's some exciting portions to it, but there's no doubt I've got a lot of work to do, and I've got a lot of work to do with the next staff. But I certainly appreciate the confidence that ownership has shown in me, and like I said, I don't take that for granted at all.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Fernando.
Hey, Tom, was there a meeting with you and Dean and John, kind of a performance review? And if so, what did they tell you in that performance review?
Yeah, I haven't had any performance reviews, I guess. Our performance reviews are basically daily.
Oh, okay. And then Mike McCoy and Anthony Lynn in their last 2 years combined were 14 and 33 in one-score games. What do you think happens in those last 2 seasons where in one-score games they just they lose leads or they're not able to kind of get over that hump?
Well, number one, that's an interesting stat, but you just can't compare. Firstly, it's hard to compare year to year, but you certainly can't compare teams with one coaching staff to another. So I don't think that doesn't correlate. But when it comes to losing close games, there's 2 ways to look at it. To me, a loss is a loss, but it's not something that you can just teach the team how to win close games. Okay, but you work with each individual player and work on that. Try and develop that player individually, and then collectively, like I said before, collectively that's going to make team improvement. But it's the individual improvement that's going to get you there. So that's where it comes down to not only the head coach, but it comes down to each assistant coach, each position coach with the group that they work with, the players that they work with every day, whether it's in the meeting room, whether it's on a Zoom, or on the practice field. That's where that comes from. But yeah, you certainly can't compare. Certainly. 2 different staffs, 2 different teams. I mean, there's not very many players left from Mike McCoy to here right now. So,
fair enough. And lastly, will you guys be exercising Derwin James's 5th-year option?
I haven't really thought about it, but I think that would probably be a pretty easy decision. That'd be the easiest decision of the week there, Fernando.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, no problem.
Gilbert.
Hey, Tom, you mentioned keeping an open mind multiple times. Does that mean interviewing position coaches, special teams coordinators, minority coaches?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, if you look at the head coaches in the league, I mean, there's no one set model for a successful head coach. There really isn't. They come from all different backgrounds. So Andy Reid was a position coach before he became a head coach. So we have to keep an open mind.
And Tom, do you have final say on who gets hired to be the head coach?
Well, I think the controlling owner would always have final say.
And was it Dean's final?
We all have a boss, Gilbert.
Yeah. And with Dean, was he the one that decided to fire Anthony Lynn, or was that kind of a collective group decision there?
Well, I think, obviously Dean he's the owner, so he has the final voice. And, Dean's never shied away from tough decisions, but, collectively, organizationally, yeah, that was the decision, but obviously Dean has the final voice on that. And
Tom, I'm sure you weren't pleased with special teams this year. What do you think went wrong with special teams, and how do you fix it?
It may be an easier answer if I say what went right, because there just wasn't. There weren't a whole lot of things that went right this year. It was, aside from the missed kicks, I mean, you talk about the amount of hidden yardage that we lost net-wise from our punt game, our punt return game, our kickoff return was a little bit better, but it all has to improve. And I felt badly that, George Stewart is a good man. He's a good coach. And I didn't do a good enough job getting him the players that he needs. I mean, special teams, a lot of it is about awareness and savviness too. It's not just size. It's just not speed. Now, that being said, I mean, last year we had some players that were better special teamers, but our overall performance really wasn't great in 2019 either. So, but I need to do a better job stacking that group, and I will. But yeah, from top to bottom, it just wasn't nearly good enough. And that's one of the reasons why we lost some close games. I mean, there's a lot of different things in the bucket of why you lose close games, but when you have to overcome, an offense having to go a lot longer field than usual, or a defense defending a short field more than usual, just getting a punt return that's even 11, 12 yards is one less first down we have to get. And same thing with when we punt, So yeah, that has to improve. It has to prove real soon.
And Tom, it's been reported you guys interviewed Eric Bieniemy from the Chiefs. How did that go for you guys?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on anybody that we have interviewed or will interview.
And also, it's the time of year where people are making connections. People have said that you went to high school with Brian Dable. Are you guys pretty close?
Well, that's an awful personal question, Gilbert. I mean, yeah, I don't know if it's close or not, but yes, we did go to the same high school. We're from the same hometown. But I also have a close friend of mine who I went to high school with. His name's Greg Shea. He's one of the smartest people I've been around. He works in the business sector in Chicago, Illinois. He's not on our head coaching list, so I wouldn't read into where you're from or what high school you went to.
Sounds good. Thank you, Tom.
Dennis.
Hi, Tom. I know you had mentioned about not winning enough games. How much is placed on the players besides the coaches?
It's on all of us. Certainly it's on the players. And like I said before, I mean, other than Melvin Ingram, everybody that's on this team right now has come in through this regime, through myself and our staff. And obviously we extended Melvin Ingram too. So, yeah, and I think that our players are straight up. They're accountable. They've even mentioned that it's not just on coaching. I mean, players do have to execute, and it's our job to put them in positions of strength, put them in position to be successful. That's what coaching is about, and the player has to execute. And the player, if the player doesn't execute, then it's up to us to get him better, develop him, or you move on to the next player.
If you had to define the culture of the Los Angeles Chargers, what would it be?
Yeah, I don't know. That's too in depth for me right now, especially in the middle of a coaching change. But the one trait I want to make sure we always have, well, two things. One is resilience. Have to have that in this league. Things don't go your way all the time. It is a long season. It's grinding. So you got to have resilience. You got to have a love for the game and a passion for it. If you don't have that, you'll never get better. I'll stick with those two for right now.
All right. Thank you.
Kurt.
Hey, Tom. In that bucket of losing close games, when you look at 2 years ago, Anthony Lynn's walking off the field in Baltimore with a playoff win, and you can go, look at all these injuries. do you look at that as, yeah, it's a violent sport, there's going to be injuries, or does some of that need to be reevaluated because of the amount of injuries the past 2 seasons?
Our amount of injuries this year were not high. We're actually in the bottom third. So our number of injuries this year we're actually pretty good. Problem is some key players. When Derwin James gets hurt, it takes on a little more effect. Obviously.
Yeah.
When Mike Pouncey gets hurt, it's a little more effect. And every team has injuries, some more than others. But obviously our number of injuries as far as guys that missed time was not that bad. So now we're always looking at that. We're always looking for the magic formula, and there is no magic to it. Yeah, I mean, obviously we had some injury this year. We had some key ones. I mean, really, Derwin James and Mike Pouncey, those are two alpha leaders for us that we lost. Okay, I don't want to make it sound like I'm making an excuse. So, but our overall numbers, I could handle it. We could handle that.
When Mr. Spanos does use that innovative word, and we all sit back and we look at what kind of incredible year this rookie quarterback in Herbert had, would it be normal for us to think that you are going to get an offensively innovated? Is that something that would be accurate for what you're looking, or would you just be just as content if it's the right guy who's on the defensive side?
Yeah, so no matter who the head coach is, he's going to have a really good offensive plan. There's no doubt about that. But I think if you do your research and your homework, you'll see in the last 15 years, a dozen or more defensive coaches or special teams backgrounds that developed young quarterbacks. So I don't think you have to have, just because we have a young franchise quarterback doesn't mean you have to have an offensive base coach. You just don't. So, which is why we're casting a pretty wide net. So, but yeah, whoever the head coach is, no matter what his background is, you have to have a system together that can really work for Justin. And obviously we're so excited about how he came along this year. When we were just talking earlier about close losses, the one thing that I liked the most this year is for a young quarterback, he didn't turn the ball over at a high rate. That's a lot of times how you lose close games at the end, or you lose a lead at the end because you turn the ball over. We were a top 5 team in the least amount of giveaways, which is difficult to do with a young quarterback. I mean, our coaching, the offensive coaches did a great job with the offense, especially with a young quarterback, bring him along. But Justin, and he showed this in college, he protects the ball very well. And he protected it this year. I got a text from Peyton Manning about a month ago saying, well, it looks like my rookie interception record is going to hold up for another year. Because Justin was on pace for less than 10 at that point. But was really proud of how he protected the football, because that's how you win games in the second half. That's how you hold leads in the second half, is to sustain a drive, get points, and not turn the ball over. And we did that on offense.
And Tom, my last thing is, I know how close you were to Anthony. And at the beginning you said, maybe he'll be a better GM. And I would assume you only want the best for Anthony. Do you want to see him be a head coach again? Do you want to see him be a GM?
I think he could probably be a pretty good GM, actually, because he has a really good feel for personnel and for people. This is a people business. But no, he's a coach. He's an on the grass guy. Absolutely. Would love to see him be a head coach. Absolutely.
Thanks, Tom. Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you. Good to see you, Kurt.
Likewise.
All right, guys, we got about 10 more minutes with Tom here, so we'll try and get through all these. Kraz, you're next.
All right, I was on mute as well. So
You're on mute, though, Kraz.
Sorry, special teams for your tenure. I feel like I've brought this up in past winters. Maybe you guys have metrics that show it's been pretty good. We on the outside, we got to go with other stuff. 27th out of 32 is what I got aggregate composite for your tenure. This year, I don't have the ratings yet. Football Outsider has you guys last. So there seems to be a trend here, and I'm wondering if you agree with that. And I know you touched on it earlier. Why has this been if you do agree, why has it been such a tough area?
Well, I think right now, certainly I don't need any metrics for this year. I think all of our eyes saw what we saw. Okay, so I don't need metrics for this year. I don't really need metrics for last year. There's different ways to look at special teams, but I agree with you, Kraz. I mean, since I've been here, there's been times where maybe one of the four cores done well, but the other three didn't. But we've never really put it all together. So when you look at the constant, that would be what you're looking at right now. So I pride myself on preparation. I feel like I'm flexible and I learn. So I'm going to keep working at it. We're going to make sure we get the right head coach who also has a special teams plan and the right special teams coach. And I'm going to work with those guys to make sure they have everything that they need. And it's not like I haven't done that before, but obviously I haven't done it at a high enough level that it's shown on the field. So, but that is a major point of emphasis this offseason.
And then on the search, is Dean going to get more involved? That'd be question number one. Then real fast, if a coach wanted to have a would-be Chargers head coach said, obviously it's collaborative. It's collaborative with all 32 teams, but really I'd want to have final say on the roster, Tom. Would that be okay?
It's funny, those questions are talked about a lot more in the media than they are in football buildings. So I don't really even focus on that. And as far as, Dean's always been heavily involved as he should. So he'll be heavily involved in this. And I mean, obviously there's a lot on the head coach's plate. There's a lot on the GM's plate, but there's more on an owner's plate. He's got a lot of things going on, but he's always been heavily involved, and he will be. And it's helpful that he is, because he's been in this league a long time, and he's gone through different head coaching searches. He's worked with a lot of different people. He's a great sounding board. He gives great advice, and he has people skills. He can read people very well. And I think, you can't have, 8 or 9 or 10 people involved in an interview and get different perspectives. But it's good to have different and have multiple people in these interviews, so you can have good discussions about these people we're talking to. I mean, it's hard when you haven't worked with people before. When you do these interviews, there's only so much you can learn on a Zoom or even an in-person interview for 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours. But he'll continue to be heavily involved as he should be.
Thank you.
Emmanuel.
How do you feel about the backup QB situation this offseason, especially with Tyrod being a free agent? Do you feel like y'all set?
Well, we'll kind of, I don't know what the situation will be next year yet. I mean, a lot of our decisions as far as what we do going into next year will be based on, number one, what's the salary cap going to be? Because every decision we make, there's the salary cap component. And then two, who the head coach is, and after he evaluates the roster, what his thoughts are. Tyrod did a great job for us in the backup role. It wasn't the role we thought he was going to have to start the year, but he ended up being the backup, and he handled it extremely well, just like we thought he would. And we still like Easton Stick a lot. And Easton got a good amount of work in practice. I do think he's got a chance to be a solid quarterback in this league. I'm praying to God that we have preseason games next year so he can get out there and play a little bit. So we've got 3 people there, right? Well, we got 3, including Justin. Obviously, Tyrod's a free agent, so we'll see where that goes. Still a lot of moving parts, and not only that position, but some others.
Sure. And then Pep Hamilton's been getting a lot of praise lately. How do you feel he's done this season? What's made him such a good coach?
He was awesome, Emmanuel. He really was. And it's funny because since he was coaching in the XFL, and then we were in the pandemic, none of us were met face to face with him until the first day of training camp. Players, the rest of our staff. I had known of him, had not worked with him before, but had heard great things about him. His work with all of our quarterbacks, not just Justin, but all 3 quarterbacks, his work on the field with those guys is impressive to watch. His attention to detail, everything from footwork to release to everything in between, and the amount of work he puts in with those guys, it was really fun to watch. And I can see why he has a reputation that he does. He has it's not hard to see. He's got a pretty bright future in this league, or in college for that matter.
Thank you.
All right, Tom, last 2. Cam, back over to you.
Estranged.
Hey, Tom, to follow up on the Hamilton issue, has he been given some consideration? Do you know if head coaching is something that he wants to do?
Yeah, I wasn't going to comment on any head coaching, any regards to candidates for head coaches. But that doesn't mean everything I just said about Pep is right on. Like I said, he has a bright future either in this league or college. Doesn't matter where. Somewhere where they're playing football. He's really good at what he does.
And just lastly for me, who, if any, players were consulted prior to you making the coaching change?
None. None. I mean, I talked to a good amount of players individually afterwards. I still have some players to get to. Yeah, those discussions were all after the fact.
Thank you, sir.
All right, last one. Back to Joe.
Tom, I know you're not going to give us specifics as far as who you've interviewed, but how many people have you interviewed so far?
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, as far as how many we'll actually do, 8, 10, 12, we'll kind of see where it ends up.
But have you done 4 to 6 so far, or 2 or 3, or?
Shoot, today's Wednesday. The season just ended Sunday. It just seems irrelevant, Joe. I love you, Joe. I just don't. This seems irrelevant to me.
Okay.
We'll get it all done in due time. Like I don't have a time frame of when it will get done. Certainly couldn't see anything getting done this week. Typically looking at minimum 2 weeks, but we'll see. It's hard to know right now, and it's hard to know exactly how many we will do, but it'll be more than we did last time. Like I said, I think Zoom will help us with that.
Right. I was just asking how many interviews you've done the past couple days. I wasn't asking for total over the next couple weeks. I was just wondering if you've done any the past couple days.
Yeah, we've gotten started.
Okay. How much harder is it if your preferred or optimal candidate coaches through the Super Bowl as far as building a staff and everything, since officially he can't start until after the game?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. You just figure out a way. If you think he's the right guy, you wait. I mean, when I look back, the Indianapolis Colts hired Frank Reich as their head coach in mid-February. He put a great staff together. Chris Ballard did a heck of a job with that through that whole process, and their process got a little bit off the rails there. They hired Frank like the second week of February, put an outstanding staff together. So I think sometimes in this business we feel like the music's playing and we're trying to move real fast. The music stops. We got to make sure we have a coach in every spot. There are a lot of good football coaches out there. We need to find the ones that fit us, fit the head coach the best. But I think we can be patient with that. So if you asked me that 8 years ago, I probably wouldn't have had the same answer. But I feel good. If it's something that we have to wait for, we'll wait. We'll wait and we'll make it work.
With a young quarterback, and since you guys have gone the assistant first-time route the last couple times, would you lean more toward a veteran head coach or somebody with head coaching experience?
Yeah, I don't think we're leaning one way or another. I mean, if you just look at our conference right now, 6 of the 7 teams in the playoffs, their head coaches were first-time head coaches. So, no, we're not really leaning anyway. We're just gonna try and find the right guy. Like I said before, there just isn't one specific model, and if we hire this model, it will put us in the Super Bowl. So, we're gonna keep an open mind through this process and see where it leads us.
But if you hired somebody with defensive experience, obviously you would want to know his OC choice and stuff. But so would that be more of like a team hire? You'd be hiring in tandem, both of trying to hire 2 at the same time, knowing who he might want as his OC.
I mean, it doesn't mean you hire him at the same time. I mean, you hire the head coach, and then you can start going after his coordinators from there.